Diabetes Connections is brought to you by inhaled insulin, glucose management in the moment, by Omnipod, simplify life with Omnipod 5, and by Dexcom G7, effortless diabetes management that fits into your lifestyle.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, for adults with type 1, an initial misdiagnosis of type 2 is unfortunately all too common. That happened to this week's guest, but what's perhaps more unusual is what happened next. He was correctly diagnosed by TikTok.
But as I saw that these were getting comments and I was getting information, I was like, well, I can keep getting information if I put something else out and ask questions. So in my videos, I ask questions like, is this high? Am I doing this right?
Justin Eastzer talks to me about the community support he found even before he was correctly diagnosed, how it led him to create his own diabetes videos and content. You may know him better as Diabetech, and how his experience with cancer as a very young adult has shaped his life. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome, everybody, to another week of the show. I'm always so glad to have you here. I am your host, Stacey Sims. As many of you know, my son Benny was diagnosed with type 1 right before he turned 2. He is now 18, and he is home as you are listening to this. As I'm taping it, he is on his way home. He's been away at summer camp for 9 weeks. He was staff this summer at his regular camp, not a diabetes camp where he's gone since he was very young, but he was a lifeguard this summer. So he had to go for an extra week of training and staff stuff, and he had to stay an extra day or two for staff stuff on the back end. So I cannot wait to see this kid. I haven't hugged him in 9 weeks. This is the longest he's ever been away from home. But I guess it's good practice because we're turning right around and taking him to college in a couple of weeks. I got to say, I am so grateful for the moms and the dads who have kind of come before me and helped me with this transition so far. I'm going to lean on you a lot in the weeks to come. I know Benny's going to be fine, but gosh, my youngest kid going to college is a very big deal, even without diabetes. My guest this week is better known as Diabetech. He has also been known as Justin Tech. Justin Eastzer was already very successful at making technology videos. He was working at CNET, and then he was diagnosed with what he was told was type 2. I will let him tell the story, but how he was correctly diagnosed is really a social media story. And it's funny, Benny was diagnosed pretty much before social media back in 2006. So I'm really fascinated by how much the diabetes community has changed. I mean, you think about it, we had the really early days of blogging to social media, which was a bunch of writing. It's hard to remember how video was not really a part of it, and pictures were barely a part of it, to now really only video and images, and then TikTok. And you can hear me sort of Gen X my way through this interview as we talk about, privacy and how much to post and all that sort of stuff. And after the interview, I'm going to come back. I want to talk about a new campaign to end diabetes stigma that you should know about. All right, all that coming up right after this. If you're a regular listener, you've heard me talk about Afrezza, the only ultra-rapid-acting inhaled mealtime insulin. But did you know it's both fast in and fast out? Fast in means it can start to control blood sugar in about 12 minutes. Fast out means it leaves your body after about 1.5 to 3 hours for the 4-unit and 12-unit cartridges, respectively. This gives you the flexibility to take additional doses if needed based on your blood glucose levels after meals. Find out more, see if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium. It is not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you ever smoked, have ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Justin, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to talk to you.
Of course, you too. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, we got a lot to go through. You have just burst onto the scene and hit the ground running. Talk to us a little bit, just to start, about your diagnosis. This is pretty recent.
Yeah, it's been 2 years since I got my type 1 diabetes diagnosis. Originally, I was misdiagnosed as type 2. So for 6 months, I was taking metformin and I was still like very sick. I was experiencing, all the symptoms, peeing all the time, fatigue, just like irritability. And I had lost 20 pounds, and to a point where friends were like, "You look skinny." And I was like, "Thank you." They were like, "No, you look sick skinny." I was like, so I weighed myself because it was during COVID. I was like eating all this crappy food. So in my head was like being unhealthy. And so I weighed myself and I was 155 and I'm normally 175. So that was a shock to me. So at the time I decided to switch to another doctor in the same practice, and he started me on some long acting insulin, kept me on the metformin, but I still had that type 2 diagnosis. And I was posting videos of what this doctor had me doing, testing my blood sugar. I was like, 450, is that high? And like, this is me taking Lantus. And the community, the diabetes community on TikTok found these videos. They blew up. I got all these comments. You need to get an endo. You need to get a CGM, a pump. I didn't know what any of this was. And so I did. I went to an endo and I got that type 1 diabetes diagnosis. And I truly owe it to that community for finding me and guiding me to that, because it was really just by luck.
It's amazing.
I probably
would have.
Yeah.
I want to stop you there because maybe this is a generational thing, because I'm Gen X. You are younger. I mean, I know everybody shares everything online, right? But when you started posting about your type 2, what you thought was a type 2 diagnosis, why were you doing that in the first place?
Well, so at the time, I was a tech YouTuber. I worked in Hollywood for 8 years, and then I left and just started my own thing called Justin Tech on YouTube and social media, and where I reviewed technology and went to different conventions and interviewed people. I did like mixed reality, virtual reality, smart home stuff. Anything I thought was cool, I reported on. It kind of just felt natural to make these videos. And I was like, let me experiment with TikTok. I had put like other videos on, and then I just found this interesting, like what I was going through. So I just like started posting on TikTok. And yeah, it's just like a very natural thing for me to create content. And I'm pretty much like an open book. I like talking to people. I like sharing my stories. And the way these videos have been received has only pushed me further. I tell a lot of people, like, it took me to get diabetes to truly understand the power of social media, because I was tech YouTubing for so long. And yeah, I built a large audience, but I never created a sense of community on that channel. A, because it wasn't niche, and B, because while I loved it, I wasn't super duper passionate about one thing and that I just wanted to teach everyone about. I was just like, this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. Whereas like this is super niche, and I'm just so energized and passionate about this topic. I want to continue to learn more. And as I learn, I want to educate.
Yeah.
And so that pushes me.
When you started getting those messages on TikTok saying you need a CGM, or maybe this isn't type 2, do you remember what you were thinking? Was it kind of like, yes, this makes sense, or these people are bananas, but I better go to my doctor? And what did the doctor say when you said TikTok sent me?
Right. Well, I tell that to every doctor I see, because I think it's important for people to understand like the power of community on social media. It's so powerful. You can get so much valuable free information. I was surprised by the outpouring of comments. I was not expecting these to blow up. This is just interesting to me, and I'm going to put it out into the world. I didn't think they were crazy, because something felt like it was wrong. Like I felt terrible, yet I was being treated for this disease. So something felt off to me. And I guess part of the reason I put this out there was for answers. It had to have been. It's hard to think back.
Yeah.
This was so new to me. I thought maybe some people could connect and maybe I could learn from them. And then that is maybe the first one I just threw up there. But as I saw that these were getting comments and I was getting information, I was like, well, I can keep getting information if I put something else out and ask questions. So in my videos, I ask questions like, is this high? Am I doing this right? Things like that. And I was getting all of this information for free without even needing to go to a doctor instantly.
Did the doctor, when you came in, Did you tell them like, hey, I got this on TikTok, or these are questions, or did you just say, I know something else is?
Oh, they think it's awesome. Yeah, my endo just thought it was like incredible the way I like was brought to her. And then specifically my diabetes educator, Mary Rose, she like has been one of my biggest supporters. She's from the second I went to her and she heard like what I was doing on YouTube. She's like, there's this hole you can fill that exists that, you know, you can like really educate and help people with technology, because a lot of people have issues with technology. And when you tie that to your health, that's overwhelming. So if I'm able to like kind of bridge that gap to help people understand and know how to use this technology in a very friendly and easy to understand way, then I feel like I've done my job. And she just loves what I'm doing. I saw her at ADA and I met her for the first time in a real person because we were doing telehealth the whole time. So that was incredible. And she was just like taking videos of me everywhere. She was talking me up to everyone. She's just been such a support and also definitely pushed me to do what I'm doing. Oh, there's my pump.
All right. Check it out. Everything good?
Yeah, I have 8 more hours on it.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if I should tell you this because it makes me sound kind of creepy, but I saw you meet your diabetes educator. I saw you meet Mary Rose at ADA.
Oh.
You were talking to somebody and then she caught your eye and you're like, wait a minute, I got to go say hello. So I got to see that, which was very cool and very genuine and very nice.
It was amazing.
Talk to me a little bit about when you pivoted from asking all those questions to starting to educate other people. When we talk about technology and diabetes, it's interesting for me to meet somebody like yourself who's been diagnosed for just a couple of years, because when we entered diabetes land in 2006, the technology looked very, very, very different. I'm not even sure we would really talk a lot about diabetes technology. We probably would have talked about tools, but I think that the verbiage in that way would have been different. So when you started, what did you start talking about? Were you showing people how things worked on you? Were you talking about how, I mean, I know what you do now, right? You're showing everything that's new and the latest and greatest, but how did it start? I'm amazed how hard these automated insulin delivery systems work. Omnipod 5 automatically increases, decreases, or pauses insulin delivery every 5 minutes. This technology is called Smart Adjust, and it's in the pod. So that means if you're out on the football field and the controller is in your bag, the pod and the Dexcom G6 continue to talk and make adjustments. That would have been awesome for us in middle school or when Benny was backstage at the school play. All of that, and you get the freedom of no tubes. Fill out the quick online form, see if you're eligible. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo. For full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions, go to omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Now back to Justin, and he's answering my question about where he decided to start when he began talking publicly about diabetes technology.
Each time I went to my diabetes educator, I learned something new, whether that was carb counting, the 15-15 rule, what to do when you're low, exercising, how to use a pump, putting on a pump for the first time. Like each time I met with her, I took something valuable and I shared it to the world, you know,
I hear you, right?
I shared it on social media. It really was just like, as I was learning, I was like, you know, people don't have access to this information. So why not give it to them for free? So each time I went to an appointment, I learned something new. I put it out there, and it started with just like simple lifestyle stuff. And then because I didn't get into technology right away. And then once I started with technology, I got the InPen. So that was a smart insulin pen. So I showed people how that works. And I was on that for a little while. Then I got on Omnipod, which was my first pump. I did as much content as I could about that, whether it was rotating the pump, how the pump works, putting on a pump for the first time, putting on a pump with my diabetes educator, using the PDM. Then I got into looping, which is like a non-FDA cleared system that's been around for some time. So I got into that and explaining what that is and how it works. I feel like you really can just keep going on and on about all this stuff. But then specifically, I would start documenting experiences I was having. I went on a bike ride and I went low, and this is how I handled it. I went low at dinner with a bunch of people I didn't really know well, and this is the internal struggle I had. Yeah. So if you're having that, you're not alone. I went to a blackout dinner with friends and didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to see my food and had a panic attack. Like, these are very real experiences that I don't know are going to happen until they happen. And that's just like something I want to share because I know people are really struggling out there or feel alone because I've felt alone and isolated and I have these moments. So like being able to share like my coping mechanisms and the way I treat my diabetes, if that can help people, then, great. If I'm helping one person, then that's awesome.
All right. I feel like every question I ask you, I feel like I'm 97 years old. Blackout dinner? Is this a dinner during a blackout or is this something else?
No, it's like a restaurant where you go and the lights are all like you're literally deprived of light. You're in pitch black and they bring you meals to your table. So we picked 3 courses before, which was pretty helpful, but I had a panic attack because I didn't realize until we like got there that it didn't click for me,
Right,
sometimes,
right.
especially since I've only had diabetes for like 2 years, I like these new things happen. And I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't think about that. So I like mentioned to the hostess, I was like, hey, like, can you like help me figure this out? And she was like not helpful. So I had a panic attack. And then luckily I spoke to the waiters who are they're blind in some way, or they have like vision issues. That's part of the whole thing too, is that all of the staff that are serving you don't have like great eyesight. So I went outside with the 2 waiters and I spoke to them about like my situation, how I would literally need to be escorted out before each meal to dose myself. And somehow I like was in range the entire time, but I was really freaked out. It was tough. And my friends were freaked out in their own way. I heard after the dinner, so it was unsettling for everyone. But then that extra layer was like, it was a lot for me.
Wow.
And there's a video on TikTok about it.
Okay. You've mentioned that you had a technology channel before. When you started talking about diabetes technology, I'm curious, what was your reaction? Because again, you're coming into this community in the last 2 years when a lot has happened. What was your reaction coming from covering technology, which I assume was advanced in lots of different things? What was your reaction coming in and then covering diabetes in the same way? So what I guess what I'm trying to get at is, did you feel coming in during a time when there's a lot going on, like the technology was working pretty well? I'm just asking because, I mean, and people who've listened to the show for a long time with the We Are Not Waiting movement and everything else, it's just interesting to get your perspective. Somebody who's kind of plopped in here in 2021. I guess the big criticism used to be, like, this thing doesn't talk to this thing. And my iPhone can do this, but my pump is stupid. So what's it like to come in at a time where there is a lot more than we had to be offered?
Yeah, I do always say that I was lucky to be diagnosed when I was, because I feel like the technology that exists today, I feel spoiled by being able to have used it so quickly. And I do feel like I'm able to live a very normal life or very close to it because of closed loop systems. And also because I hopped on pretty quickly to DIY loop.
Yeah.
I even like starting a year and a half ago had features that most people didn't have and still don't, like bolusing for my Apple Watch and being able to log my blood sugar into the Loop app, even if my CGM's not connected for some reason. During that 2-hour warm up, I could still have closed loop just by entering it into Apple Health. Like there's all these crazy features that I've had access to that are leaps and bounds ahead of what people still have today. I feel very fortunate to have that and to have had the guidance that's led me to that. And I also feel like I've entered at a time when diabetes technology is exploding. And I feel like every week, every other week, there's a big announcement, like the world's smallest pump with Mobi, or a 7-day infusion set, a new algorithm. Like there's just so much to talk about. And when I first got into this, I was worried. I was like, am I going to have enough to talk about? But it feels like there's just something new every day. And what I hear from like people who have had diabetes for a long time and what they had to do with like mixing insulins and having to like really calculate, like, yeah, I feel very lucky or fortunate to have been diagnosed at this time.
Well, and this isn't your first health diagnosis or your first health scare. I know you're open to sharing this. I'm going to sound very personal here, but can you talk a little bit about when you were 21, right? You had a very big health scare.
Yeah. So when I was 21, I had just moved to LA. And I got a call that I had neuroblastoma like 3 days later. So I had to move back to New York. I had had tests done and they found this like massive lymph nodes, went to an oncologist. They had to actually bring it to a convention because they didn't know what it was. And they figured it out there. It's such a rare form of cancer for someone my age to have. Normally 2-year-olds get it, like they're infants. So I moved back and I got treatment in New York with my family. And that was like the scariest thing I had ever experienced.
This is a form of brain cancer?
Neural. It was on my spine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think in many ways that experience has helped me today in so many ways because I value my life and I understand how fragile life can be. And like, I guess like I try to live every day to the fullest or like do the thing. And so when I was diagnosed with diabetes, while it was scary and very emotional, it was something that was easier to tackle having gone through something that like was life threatening. And it really matured me at such a young age. It really changed like the direction of my life, I think. And that's something I want to share with people because it just puts a lot into perspective. It's put a lot into perspective for me. I like to say like cancer was the worst and the best thing that ever happened to me. The worst because, well, it was the scariest thing and I was confronting like death and it was really traumatizing. But the best because before that, I was smoking cigarettes, like a half a pack a day. I wasn't eating like super well. I didn't work out a ton. So like, I just like have completely transformed my life to be a very like healthy lifestyle since then. And I try to do that with my diabetes too.
You know, it was a different time and TikTok, but did not exist when you were 21. Was there any community? I imagine this experience just in that way is very different.
I didn't search for community at the time. It would have been helpful. It was a very isolating moment, but I'm really lucky to have had my family with me and like some supportive friends. I think one thing that helped me was because it was a pediatric cancer, I was on the pediatric floor. Oh, yeah. So I was surrounded by people under the age of 13, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. And there was a sense of like needing to be strong around them because if they could do it, then like I should be able to do it.
I cannot. My son was diagnosed with diabetes right before he turned 2. So we were in the same kind of hospital and the same kind of setting. And I can only imagine if there was a young man, you know, the little kids probably thought you were some kind of hero if they saw you in the hallway. Like, what's this guy doing here?
Yeah, it was funny that, you know, there was like a jungle gym and little like, like I felt very awkward there, but I also felt this like sense of duty.
That's interesting. I'm laughing only because humor is one of my big coping mechanisms. I'm trying to figure out what your poor mom and dad thought when then several years later you call them and say, the cancer is not back, but I might have type 1 diabetes. I mean.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, or actually even before I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I was telling my dad that I wasn't feeling well, that I was peeing all the time and all this stuff. He was like, you could have diabetes. And I was in such a sense of denial that I like just ignored it. And then I got like a test back that said I was pre-diabetic. And I told my dad, he's like, you need to go get an endocrinologist. And I really wish I listened to him. And it's weird that I didn't because of like my cancer experience. And I really did put an emphasis on my health. But I think there was just a sense of like, I already had my thing. My thing was cancer, right? I'm not going to have another thing. That was my thing. And so I ignored it for some time. And then finally I did get that type 2 diagnosis. I'd say like it was like 4 months of denial. And then I finally got that. And then my dad was still like, you need to go see an endocrinologist. Your doctor probably doesn't know much. And I didn't listen. It took TikTok to listen. Like I needed 50, 100 people to be like, you need to do it, to be like, okay. So now I listen to my dad when it comes to health.
Yeah, exactly. Your dad's like, I was right all along. We never listened to our parents.
Yeah.
Right.
My mom, she was just really nervous and scared and didn't understand it. And I think that I've had to educate her a lot because my dad will still say like, should you be eating that? You shouldn't eat that. And it's like, even though I've told him so many times that I can, like, he still kind of says it sometimes and it really gets on my nerves. And I try to I just try to rub it off. I've lost this battle.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Earlier, one of my first questions to you was basically about putting all your stuff online, right? Not a lot of privacy, putting all your information out there, which is something that I've held off with for a long time, mostly because it's not my story, right? I don't think it's appropriate for me to tell about my son and put all his personal information out there. It's different when it's us. Are you still feeling good about putting all this information out there? Is this something that you'll think you'll continue with? Or do you get worried sometimes about the amount of medical information you are putting online? Or do you edit as you go? I mean, I've written 2 books and I still haven't told most of the stories that I want to keep private about my kids.
Yeah, I don't really have much to hide. I think my vulnerability really helps a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I am not afraid to share that. In some ways I censor myself. Like, the interesting thing about social media is it projects like the perfect version of you. And I try not to always show the perfect version of me. And in many ways, I have been struggling in my own like health with like some long COVID stuff that I don't talk about on there. And I even had a friend tell me yesterday, because I was complaining to him about my symptoms. He was like, it's so weird because like you look so happy on social media. I was like, that's because that's what social media is. So I try to do my best showing my bad moments too, especially when it comes to diabetes, because I think that it's very relevant to people. I don't do things that like aren't safe for work. Like I'm vulnerable, but I also like am aware that like I don't know where my career is going. I have aspirations for where it can go, but like I don't want to like do stuff that's gonna like count me out of like getting hired somewhere. So I'm not like a Instagram thought, or like showing off like all this. Like I try to be like keep it a little bit professional, but I don't know how long I'm gonna do this. I'm very much living in the moment right now. I'm living day to day. I have like long-term goals. I don't know how I'm getting there. I'm just like working toward it. And my podcast that I launched a few months ago has just taken off and like has just been the biggest investment in my brain. And I'm meeting all of these people. And then the YouTube videos, I think that they're right now very simple videos, but and like news videos. But ultimately, I really want to do like complex investigative journalism type videos or documentary type content on there. But I can't do that until I have a basis of like what my business is. And then I can like hire like a team to help me with that. So I think in many ways, the social media, yes, it's going to continue. And I think it could even get stronger if I have a team to help me organize and just so I can shoot and then throw it to someone to edit. Right now I have a part-time editor, but having a full-time editor could really help put out more content. The goal is to put out content that's good enough, not perfect. Just keep putting out as much as I can in so many areas and seeing what works and what doesn't work and then learning from that.
What has surprised you about diabetes in the last 2 years? Since you got your actual diagnosis, I imagine it wasn't what you thought it would be, but I'm curious what surprised you.
I mean, I guess I've talked about this already, but I've never felt like I've felt like I've been part of like the gay community, which is great in its own way, but like how tight knit the diabetes community is and supportive. And after going to ADA and meeting you there and meeting all of these other people who then knew everyone, like being a part of this community and being recognized and just being there with everyone was just like an incredible experience that I didn't understand fully even until I was there. And I think it's amazing to be a part of this group. And I always encourage people to find it themselves in whatever way they need it too. There are so many different communities out there for so many different types of things, whether it's sports or other diseases. And having that support system just helps you like talk it out and get through. And like I said before, like I didn't realize the power of community until this happened. So I think that's what surprised me the most, and being so welcomed into it. And also like the outpouring of support that I received on TikTok, like that was shocking to me. Yeah. And it's why I do what I do.
It's an incredible community. And I've met a few people who are perhaps islands of themselves, right? They don't collaborate. They don't want to talk to other people. Those are very few and far between. The diabetes community in general is here to help in any way, shape, or form. Before I let you go, and I didn't tell you this ahead of time, so I'll put you on the spot a little bit. You've covered technology and diabetes for a couple of years now. You've covered technology for many years. What's your dream diabetes technology, right? You've talked a little bit about how great Loop is. We've seen some advances. But just with what you've already worked with, what big changes would you like to see? And I'm telling you, anything, dream big.
Yeah. I mean, well, obviously I want to see a cure,
Right.
but then I'll be out of a job.
The ultimate technological
Right. No, I want that. But I think what I want and think is possible soon maybe is I want a device that lives inside of you, similar to like a pacemaker that has both insulin and glucagon in it that can self-regulate both your highs and lows. And really just like I guess there's some sort of device that like you inject into that device, but it's a device that always lives in you that measures your blood sugar. Maybe even because it's so internal, maybe it's measuring actual blood, which means that we would get readings that are instant, whereas CGMs today measure interstitial fluid. So they're like on a 20-minute lag. So imagine like a world where you don't see the devices. They have both hormones that can help with highs and lows. And having those instant readings means that it can react in the moment. And I think that is a true bionic pancreas. That is the cure with technology.
Right. All right, great. That's a great one.
So I want to see that.
I love it. Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining me. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I appreciate you sharing your story, and we will definitely see more of you on social media. But I appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much. I love your podcast. Like I listen to it all the time. So it was crazy meeting you and hearing your voice. And it's so cool to be on here.
Thank you so much.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
More information about Justin, his accounts, his podcast, I'll link everything up over at diabetes-connections.com. Every episode has its own homepage, and you will find his information there. I don't think I said this during my interview with Justin, but I'm not on TikTok. I've resisted so far. I know everybody tells me I've got to be on there. I should be putting content on there. I think with social media, it's really important that where you are feels right. You learn to speak the language, you understand the differences. And I don't have the bandwidth to figure out something else. So I will just keep myself where I am, which is Instagram, Facebook. I've been on Twitter since 2008. I'm still on X, whatever the heck it's called right now. But I'm finding myself on Threads more and more. So if you're on Threads, I'm over there now as well. And we'll see what happens with Twitter. All right. Up next, I want to talk about a new campaign to end diabetes stigma, why I signed on, and how you can too. Benny has been using the Dexcom CGM for almost 10 years now. That first insertion was at the end of 2013, just before he turned 9. It was great then. I mean, if you've done finger sticks for a while, you know how amazing it is to go from that to continuous glucose monitoring. It's even better now. The Dexcom CGM systems just keep improving. It gets more and more accurate. No finger sticks or scanning required. The easy push button insertion has made it so easy for Benny to do it himself. He has done every one since we switched to the G6 in 2018, which was so good for his independence back then. And of course, we still love the alerts and alarms and that we can set them how we want. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. To learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. You may have seen the blue and yellow graphic that's been popping up all over social media with people taking a pledge to end diabetes stigma. I was at ADA, the American Diabetes Association's scientific sessions back in June, and this was a very big topic of conversation. There was an open letter from the diabetes community asking health professionals to join patients in the call to stop diabetes stigma. And now there is a new international consensus and pledge that you can learn about. I will link it up in the show notes for this episode. Real quick, 51 experts from 18 countries came together. They reviewed the scientific evidence and they established an international consensus. This is a full report. It's been submitted for publication. As of right now, it is still under review. But the experts here are people with diabetes. They are people with research and clinical experience. If you want to show your commitment to stop the stigma, you can sign up as an individual or as a group, an organization. It's really simple. And then you can post on your social media and continue to spread the word both within the diabetes community and, even more importantly for something like this, to your friends who do not live with diabetes. I took the pledge. I signed up as an organization. So if there's a listing somewhere, it'll be Diabetes Connections. I'm excited to look for the report when it is published, and I'll pass that along as well. But I would urge you to learn more and check out that link. Also want to let you know that the early bird special pricing for Mom's Night Out Frisco, our very next event, which is coming up in October, the early bird pricing on that will end on August 13th. Frisco is October 13th and 14th. It's right outside of Dallas, Texas, if you're anywhere near that area. But we do have people flying in, driving in from all over the country, which I still have to pinch myself. But I get it. These events are so important. Being with other moms who understand what we're dealing with kind of by ourselves for an overnight event is really unique and special. And the feedback I got from the Charlotte event, our first one, was that people went home so energized and really ready to face the challenges that raising a kid with diabetes throws your way. You know, obviously we're not solving all the problems, but just knowing the support is there. You know this, it really made a big difference. So the early bird specials for these events end 2 months, just for future reference, they end 2 months before the event themselves. So for Frisco, that means early bird special is done after August 13th. For Providence, the early bird special will go away after August 27th. More information at diabetes-connections.com, of course. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.